Well, Halo Infinite is the latest game in the Halo franchise and the direct sequel to Halo 5 Guardians. And it's a game that I've been wanting to check out for a while. I've been wanting to play. I'm not much of a gamer personally, but there are some games that always catch my attention, and the Halo franchise has always been one that I've really enjoyed, and so I look forward to every new installment. And this one delivered for the most part. It's not a perfect Halo game. It's definitely not the best Halo game, but it was a nice addition to the franchise, and I, for the most part, really enjoyed it. The game picks up following the events of Halo 5 Guardians and following the humanity's encounter with the Banished, where they basically get decimated by them. Chief himself even gets totally destroyed, and this game is basically picking up the scraps from what happened to humanity and trying to build back a foundation from which they can fight the Banished. And so it's a really interesting way to start the game, and for the most part, like I said, it's a really fun game. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about specifics. When it comes to the entertainment side of Halo Infinite, it's really, for the most part, pretty good. One of the things that I really liked about this game is that it feels and looks a lot more like those classic Halo games, Halo 1, 2, and 3, than the other games made by 343 did, Halo 4 and Halo 5. And I didn't hate those games and the aesthetic they had, but it was just kind of nice to see it sort of return to that classic look, the way that Chief is designed, the way that the world is designed, and everything that you encounter just kind of feels like those classic Halo games, particularly Halo 1. This game, for the most part, draws a lot upon what Halo 1 was. You're set on a ring, and it feels a lot like some of the missions that you play in the first game. And I really like that, but it also runs into a couple of the same problems that I have with Halo 1, is that it can feel fairly repetitive at times. There is missions where you just kind of feel like you might be doing the same thing over and over again, and it's less repetitive than Halo 1 in what you do in the missions. You tend to have a little bit more variety as to things that you have to accomplish, but this is actually a more repetitive game when it comes to the look of it. You're set on the same ring the entire game, and everywhere you go, it's just the same style. Everything looks the same. There's not snowy regions, there's not desert regions, or different places that you get to go in other Halo games. It's just everything looks exactly the same the entire game. And so you kind of miss some of that variety that even Halo 1 was able to give us. So that's kind of what the biggest thing that I had an issue with in this game, as far as the entertainment of it, is that it's just kind of looks the same wherever you go. And so that was a little bit upsetting. Now, the game did feel a lot like the old games, but it also introduced a lot of new things that, for the most part, I thought worked really, really well. So one of the new things that was introduced was a grapple hook, and I was a little nervous about that going into the game, wondering, is it going to feel like Halo still? Is it going to be a little bit weird? And it's not. It's actually quite awesome. I found myself using it quite a bit. I liked it more than the booster jets and things that they had in Halo 5, and so really a great addition. I thought it was great. Other things that they did was an open world environment to it, where it's not just this linear campaign. It had more options for you to go out and do, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when we get into the interesting and intriguing side of the game. But I thought the open world worked for this game, but it's not something that I think I would like in every Halo game, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Another thing that it introduced was bosses. That's something that you don't really have in the other Halo games. Obviously, there are difficult enemies that you fight, but you never had these like set up characters as just these awesome generals that you have to take on, and this game does that, and it does it multiple times. There's a lot of different characters you can take on that are these banished elites, and so I really thought that was fun. I thought it was nice things to go out and hunt them. Some of them factor into the main storyline as well, and it leads to some fun gameplay when you have to fight them. So I really enjoyed that implement. The weapons as well. This game has a lot of the same guns that we know from the previous Halo games, but it brings in some new ones as well. For instance, the pistol changes. It's not your classic Magnum. I don't remember what the pistol's called in this game, but it's awesome. I loved every second I was using it. It was always my go-to secondary for the game because of how quick it was and how much damage it could do against an enemy. It was just phenomenal. There are a lot of new human weapons. There are a lot of new Covenant weapons, and for the most part, the human ones I really liked. The Covenant ones totally depends. I never was a big fan of the Covenant weapons in the first place, and so I think they're good, but I just don't know how they compare to some of the other ones that we had from the previous games. One of the ones that does stand out to me that I didn't like nearly as much is the shotgun on this new game. I believe it's called the Bulldog, and it's good. I did use it fairly often, but I kind of was missing the original shotgun from the Halo games. I liked that one so much back then. This one didn't quite deliver. So for the most part, the guns were really good. The characters were really good. The bosses and open world environment was really good. And so it was, all in all, a very entertaining game. But let's go ahead and jump into the story side. So the story of this game starts out really, really well. You are playing as Chief, obviously, and it's basically you wake up after you have this encounter with the Banished to find out that you lost, and humanity lost. The Banished came through and absolutely destroyed everything from humanity, and so you kind of are starting back at square one, having to build your way up. And so I thought it was a great way to start the game. I thought it had a lot of possibilities and options that you could do, and that's where the open world style of this game also fits in really well, is because you're trying to build up this foundation again. It gives you a lot of different ways to do that and lets you choose how you want to go about it, whether that's rescuing Marines, setting up bases, or completing the main storylines. You have total freedom to roam around and do what it is that you want. And because of the story that it was telling, I thought that the open world worked really well with it. I don't think the open world will work for every Halo game, depending on what story they are going for, but for this particular one, I thought it was a nice little thing to have, and I thought it brought something new to the Halo franchise that we hadn't yet seen. Some other things that were really, really great and interesting about this game was the characters themselves. There's not a lot of hero characters that you get to know in this one. It's mainly just Chief and his pilot, though I forget what the pilot's actual name is. You find it out at the end of the game. And they were both really interesting. You find a little bit more about the pilot as you go along, find out kind of who he is and what he did, which is really interesting to see kind of how he changes throughout the game from wanting to just get away to actually wanting to help Chief finish this fight. Chief is as good as ever. He feels like Master Chief. He's confident and ready to kill anything and do anything that he needs for humanity. You have Weapon, who is basically second Cortana. She's also really great. I enjoyed her. But some of the standout characters as far as this game goes is actually the villains. Like I mentioned, in the entertainment side, you have sort of bosses in this game. And one of the main ones that's kind of that final, well, not quite the final boss that you fight, but one of the main bosses that you fight at the end is Escharum. And he's kind of the leader of the Banished at this time after Atriox has been killed off. And so he was really, really interesting. And I really liked kind of how him and Chief played together, especially seeing as they had a mutual respect for one another. They're on opposite sides of this battlefield, but they see each other as soldiers, as worthy foes. And Escharum is always talking about, having his final battle and being able to go out taking on the Master Chief or beating the Master Chief. But I thought that was really interesting. I liked that storyline, how they had both heroes on their own sides, heroes to their own sides, going against each other, and how they kind of are still fighting each other. They're still obviously trying to beat the other one, but there's a mutual respect there that I thought was really, really cool. One of the things that I didn't like so much about this game is, like I said, the story starts really, really good, and then as you go along, you start to learn a little bit more about the ring that they're on and some of the things that maybe it has, and it all builds up, and it doesn't really finish off in this game. I feel like there are a lot of questions still, a lot of things that we didn't get answers to regarding the ring and regarding a lot of things. There's obviously an end credit scene that teases future stories to come, which I'm sure will answer a lot of those questions. But for this game, I don't know, it just didn't feel like it quite delivered on everything that what I would have wanted to understand and learn about. It's also surprisingly short for a campaign. Not all the Halo campaigns have been long or anything like that, but it just feels, if you were to just do the main missions, it wouldn't take you very long to get through. It's that open world that allows you to do other things that really brings some length to this game, which is fine, but it was just a little bit short. I think I beat the campaign in only a couple of days. So overall, good game. But let's talk a little bit about how clean it is. So when it comes to the cleanliness of this game, there's really nothing you need to worry about beyond what you can find in any of the other Halo games. There's nothing new here that's inappropriate or gross or anything like that. There's obviously violence. It is a fighting game, but it's not gory violence, and so it's really not all that bad. The other thing is there's a little bit of language, but again, it's nothing that's too crazy. It's nothing that really stands out and kind of takes over the entire dialogue of the game. It's just there, Marines say things, but it's not bad. And so overall, this is a fairly clean game. If you don't like your children or people playing violent stuff, don't do it. But if you're okay with that, then this is something that's definitely enjoyable that they'll really like. So overall, this is a game that was extremely fun. It felt like the classic Halo franchise, and it added a lot of new elements that for the most part worked really, really well with the story they were trying to tell and made the gameplay extremely fun. The story could at the sometimes get a little bit repetitive in the way that it works. It starts out really good, doesn't quite pay off in all the ways that you would like towards the end, but it does do a really good job with the characters, both the good guys and the bad guys, and the way that they interact and relate to each other. And so overall, it is a very fun game. It's a fairly interesting game. It's not the best in the Halo franchise, but it's definitely worth a B rating. It's something that I would check out, and I invite you to check out as well. Also, when it comes to the cleanliness, it does a wonderful job as well. It gets a B+ on that side, and overall, fantastic game. I recommend checking it out, especially if you do enjoy the Halo franchise. And of course, thanks for watching this video, and if there are any other movies, video games, or television shows you'd like to see me review in the future, let me know down in the comments, and I'll be sure to get those out to you as soon as I can. Thank you.